In this video, you can learn how to use environment variables in your Node.js project. We're going to create an env file in your project and add some variables. Then later, we will use that variables in our code. Alright, so let's get started. First, let's see why we use env files. We use env files mainly to manage and store configuration variables and sensitive information of a project. Env files provide a convenient way to store configuration settings for a project. This includes variables such as database credentials, API keys, environment-specific settings, and etc. And also, sensitive information like API keys, passwords, and tokens can be stored securely in env files. By keeping this sensitive data separate from the main code base, you can reduce the risk of exposure, especially when sharing or version controlling your code. And also, using env files facilitates easier deployment across different environments, because different environments have different configurations. So you don't have to change your code on each environment. So these are some of the advantages of using env files. And it is a must to use env files in industrial projects. Alright, so let's learn how to add an env file to your Node.js project. Here I have a simple Node.js project written with TypeScript. So let's add an env file by creating a new file in the root folder. I'm going to name that file .env. So every time you create a new env file, you have to start the file name with a dot. Alright, so I'm going to add some variables here. The first variable would be like environment. I'm going to name that env. And I'm going to set a value to this. The current environment is development, so I'm going to put that as dev. By the way, normally we use uppercase letters in environment variables. And as the second environment variable, I'm going to add port. Let's say we are going to run this project on port 3000. Alright, our env file is complete. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to install a package called .env. npm install .env. So this package will allow us to read the environment file and inject those variables into our code. Alright, package installation is complete. Now let's create a new file inside our source folder. I'm going to create a new folder for this first. I'm going to name that folder config. And inside that folder, I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to name that index.ts. So what this file does is it reads all the environment variables from env file and make them available to our code. Alright, so in this file I'm going to import the package that we just installed. Import .env from .env. And we have to call this function called .env.config. Alright. Here I am going to create a new object. I'm going to name that object config. And here I'm going to create keys as our environment variables. The first one is env, and I'm going to assign our environment variables like this: process.env, then the name of the environment variable, which is env, because just in case if this environment variable is not present, this default value will be assigned. So I'm going to hard code the default value like this. Alright, the second one is port. I'm going to use the same .env, and the default port should be 3000. Alright, now these environment variables can be accessed anywhere in our code. Alright, before that, let's export this module. Just like this. Alright, now this module can be exported and we can access this module anywhere from our code. Alright, so I'm going to close this and open up our code. Here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to import our configuration file. Import config from, I'm going to set the path config. Since the file inside of it is index, we don't have to name the file. So here let's use one of our environment variables as the port. So instead of hard coding this, I'm going to use our configuration value. So config dot, then the port, just like this. Now this port value will be accessed from our environment variable file. Alright, so to make sure that let's add that variable here as well. Oops. So it will be visible when the project is running. Alright, so let's run the project by typing npm run dev. It's starting up and it is running. Yes, it is using port 3000. Let's stop this and change this value to something like 3100, and let's start this again. And it is using now 3100. Alright, so now we can access any value in our environment variable file in our code. Alright, so that's how you can use environment variables in your NodeJS project. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed the video. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys very soon in the next video.